Jeff Passan broke the news yesterday that Manny Machado is going to the Padres, the baseball insider. And Jeff joins us now. What was the biggest surprise about this deal to you, Jeff?
The biggest surprise is how good of a tease that was. I want to know where Kyler Murray and Antonio Brown are going now, Dan. You can't do that to me.
I'm going to make you wait, Jeff. It's a tease.
I was going to say, you're very good at your job. We knew that, though.
Thank you.
I was surprised. When I got the first communication that this was happening, my response was, really? And my response was really because I had heard throughout that the Padres were being really aggressive. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't sure that Manny Machado wanted to go to San Diego. And I wasn't sure that he wanted to go to San Diego because, A, they're not going to win immediately, and B, because it's a long, long way from Miami. And Manny Machado's roots in South Florida are apparent, are abundantly clear, are an enormous part of who he is as a person. So the fact that he was going to travel all the way across the country and play and commit himself for 10 years, that was the surprising part to me. But in the end, what won out was guaranteed money. Yeah. And that's why he is a San Diego Padre officially as of Thursday or Friday and not a Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, I was told, you follow the money, certainly when it comes to these kind of free agents. If Scott Boras is involved, it's going to be likely the team that spends the most money. Who was second to the Padres for Machado?
It was the White Sox. Okay. And the White Sox believed with their offer that they actually were going to get the player. They offered Dan 8 years and $250 million guaranteed. It was a higher average annual value contract at about $31.1 million or so per year. And they also included a pair of options that would have vested with plate appearances in the 9th and 10th years at $35 million apiece. So we're talking about a potential for $320 million with just that. And from what a couple of sources told me, it pretty easily, if Manny Machado stays healthy and continues to be a productive player, could have wound up at about $340 million. So there was upside there. But I think Manny Machado recognizes that this game is hard and that there are no certain things, and that $50 million guaranteed is a lot of money to leave on the table. This was not so much a situation in which he was not willing to bet on himself as much as I think it was a situation where he bet on what was likeliest and what was smartest. And he has an opt-out after 5 seasons with the Padres that the White Sox simply weren't willing to give him. So the idea that he could potentially be a free agent again at 31 is very realistic.
All right, the market's set then for Bryce Harper, or you have to go in and top $300 million, but it felt like there's already an offer there. The Nationals were close to that, I believe, and then the Phillies are there. Are the Phillies negotiating against themselves now?
That is such a good question, and that is honestly, I think, what this is going to come down to. Is Bryce Harper going to wind up a Philadelphia Philly because they step up? And if not meet his asking price, then certainly put themselves in that zip code? Or are the Phillies going to say to themselves, we don't believe the Giants are willing to go 10 years. We don't believe that the Nationals are actually in this anymore. We see a landscape that is us and only us. And accordingly, why are we going to go well above $300 million, let alone at $300 million? And I think the answer to that, Dan, is because Bryce Harper is worth that. And there comes a point at which you want to pay the player fair value and the type of value that he's worth. And I think with all of the ancillary things Bryce Harper brings, in addition to the baseball stuff, he is worth $300 million plus. But the Phillies could stand a hard line here. And one person last night said, this is going to be J.D. Martinez 2.0. The two make total sense for each other, but the Phillies aren't going to go to an outlandish number because they don't have to.
How many teams do you think are actually involved in this? You mentioned the Giants as well as the Phillies. Anybody else?
I look at the Nationals, and I understand there are people up and down their baseball operations department who say, we're done with Bryce. We don't want Bryce here anymore. We've moved on. And yet I also understand that they're a train ride away from Philadelphia, that they're in the same division and fighting for playoff spots against the Phillies. And the idea that this player who they grew from the time he was 17 years old up to a big leaguer, an all-star every year, and a guy who's now going to get $300 million plus dollars, the fact that he would be in a different uniform in Nationals Park 3 times a year cannot sit well with them. So I'm not counting the Nationals out, Dan, until the ink is dry on the contract, because I feel like they're, even though they've said publicly we're out, I just don't entirely believe that at this point.
He's Jeff Passan, ESPN Baseball Insider, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. If I gave the Yankees a mulligan on the Giancarlo Stanton contract, what do you think that they would do? Because we all knew that this day was going to come for Bryce Harper, and that we thought the Yankees would be loading up and that Bryce Harper would be a Yankee. Do you think that the Yankees are happy?
I mean, I wrote a column like 2.5 years ago, and I tweeted what the Yankees' future lineup was going to look like, and I had Bryce Harper right in the middle of that thing. And it's not just the Yankees, like the Cubs. You think the Cubs don't look at themselves with Jason Hayward at $180 million,
man.
Yu Darvish at $126 million,
oh boy,
and Tyler Chatwood at $38 million, and say, boy, that $344 million would have looked really good with Bryce Harper. Would have looked really good with him.
And what is Aaron Judge going to be worth when it's his? If he continues this,
and you know what? That's a big part of this. And the question is just how much of an appetite Aaron Judge has for risk. Because Aaron Judge, if he does not sign a long-term contract extension, and I think he's probably going to. I think it's almost going to be like the Mike Trout deal. And Trout got, I think it was like $160 or so million, and he's making 34 plus now. I almost wonder if Judge is going to wait for a Trout extension too, because clearly the Angels want to get Mike Trout locked up. They don't want him going to Philadelphia. Yeah. They don't want the allure drawing him back there. They want to get him signed up to an extension. The Yankees want to get Aaron Judge. And I'm not saying that what Aaron Nola did or what Whit Merrifield did recently or what other players are doing in terms of buying out arbitration years is indicative of some kind of a trend. But I also think that the developments in free agency have scared a lot of players, and that they want to grab that money while they can. And is that the right thing to do? It's tough for me to judge when anybody's getting tens of millions of dollars. More than anything, it just affects other players going forward.
Good stuff, Jeff. As always, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Pleasure's always mine, Dan. Thanks for having me.
That's Jeff Passan, ESPN Baseball Insider.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.